How's it going, fam? Welcome back to Erica's EDC, and today we are going to talk about toughness. Guys, this is going to be a really fun video. I have been kind of collecting information and looking at some experiments and data sheets the past few weeks, watching some videos, and this is kind of a topic where it's going to lead into a massive couple months of testing for me, but I want to talk about what my goal is during that testing, because I think toughness in knives is it's a subject that has been really kind of safeguarded, like there are gatekeepers to this topic, and finally we have enough custom makers that are debunking a lot of this information that has been fed to us over the past couple decades, and I'm really excited to be part of the movement of shining some true scientific light onto this topic. So today we're going to talk about toughness in knives, and I have quite a few fixed blades coming in with some custom heat treats, and they're in really cool steels. And this topic will flow into that massive test that I'm going to run. And hopefully at the end, we will be re-educated correctly on toughness in knives. I'm really excited to share this with you guys. So let's talk about it. Toughness in knives. A lot of us in the community entered the community thinking that toughness was basic steels, heat treated fairly low. That way, upon impact, our knives would not break. And that has been spoon-fed to us, like I said, for decades. If you watch bushcraft channels, anybody that does like camping and stuff like that, typically speaking, they have a knife from a reputable company that makes knives for toughness, okay? So here we have an Essie Izula, a really cool little knife, and it is, small, compact, and when you think of Essie or tops, you think toughness, because that's what they have been marketing. They run a lot of steels that, are fairly generic and tough. Okay, so Essie uses 1095. I know that they are recently making models within the past few years with S35 VN and most recently MagnaCut. But for quite a while, when you thought of Essie, for example, you thought 1095 and toughness, okay? Now, I have been kind of dropping some subtle hints in my videos that I find it very intriguing that certain companies will run knives thicker for toughness, they say, and then they also will run a very low hardness also for toughness, okay? So, 55 to 57, maybe 57 to 59, no higher than 60, because God forbid you run it higher than 60, you won't have any toughness, okay? Now, the interesting thing is, if you're running a knife this thick for toughness, that's where it ends. There's your toughness. You have a thick knife with a thicker BTE behind the edge thickness for toughness. So why would you also run it very, very, very low and soft, 55 to 57, for toughness? That, in my mind, in my opinion, doesn't make the most sense. So within the past few years, we've had a lot of fairly younger makers coming onto the scene, making custom knives with really good high performance steels with a higher hardness, and these knives are not failing us. They also have toughness, even though in theory what we have been told is that the super steels, let's use Maximate here for an example, the super steels are not worth your time if you're a hard user because they're too hard, they're too chippy, and they're hard to sharpen, okay? And something like 1095 you can sharpen in the field because it's easier. Let's debunk something very quickly. There is no such thing as a steel that is hard to sharpen. That doesn't exist. if you have the right sharpening supplies and time, you can sharpen any steel, and none of them are hard to sharpen. They just take a longer period of time. And I've said that on the channel many times. So Maximate may take you a longer duration to sharpen because it is a harder steel. So it literally just takes more time. It's not difficult. If you have a 600 grit diamond plate that is high quality, you can sharpen Maximate within a few minutes. It's just, it takes a little bit longer than, let's say, 1095 because it is a harder steel. But there's no such thing as more difficult to sharpen. It's just a time period, okay? But we have been told, you know, if you're out field dressing game and doing bushcraft tasks and camp cooking, you want a softer, tougher steel because it won't fail you in the field and it will not break, okay? And super steels are bad news because they're too hard and they're going to chip on you and you can't beat on them. What if, for instance, there was a middle point? What if between running something soft for toughness and running something very hard for edge retention, what if there was a baby that was born that had all of the aspects and it was right in the middle and it gave you everything you wanted? That's where custom makers come in. Guys, there are so many custom makers that are really doing some incredible things, and I just think that due to lack of education on those smaller custom makers, we did not even know that that middle point existed. So, a beautiful example here is this Steve Kalari Custom Knives Steadfast EDC. This is from Kalari Custom Knives, Super Steel Steve. Y'all know him. Steve made this for me in MagnaCut. This is at 63.5, but we've been kind of saying, 63 because, we just try to be more general, right? So this is 63.5, but let's just say for fun, it's 63, okay? Now, to a lot of people, for some reason, they are under the impression that if you run MagnaCut above 62, you're losing toughness. Somehow that rumor got started. Laren never said that. He never said that. Somebody made that up and it spread like wildfire and now people think that, okay? So in theory, this knife doesn't have as good of toughness as, let's say, this knife, because this one is softer, this one is too hard. I will tell you right now, I have a video of me batoning through very hard wood with this knife. This knife is in MagnaCut at 63, and it's only like 11 or 12 thou behind the edge, okay? That's fairly thin. I batoned with this knife, and nothing happened to it. No edge damage, no rolling, no chipping, no nothing. It was exactly the same at the end as it was at the beginning, okay? Now, you may be wondering, why is that relevant? Well, because I have taken knives, for instance, that run softer for toughness, and they rolled doing the same exact batoning. Now, why did that happen? Because this edge on this knife is too soft. So did it break? No, thank goodness. We don't want anything to break. But it's so soft that the edge itself will kind of roll, right? It'll kind of mush. And that's way easier to fix than a full-blown chunk missing out of your edge. Absolutely. But that doesn't have to happen. There are options out there where even the rolling doesn't happen. And how you achieve that is through a higher hardness. Now, does this apply to every steel? No, because I'm sure if you take S110V and try to baton with it, it could chip. It's more specific to the steel, generally speaking. Granted, if you took S110V, made it as thick as your mom and then batoned with it, I'm sure nothing would happen to it. But, geometry plays into things here. Geometry generally is more important than the steel itself, because you can run any steel at the correct geometry for what you need, whether it's toughness or edge retention, and it will work. But we are not told that. We're not educated on that. We're just told straight up, a thick, soft knife is what you want for toughness. But there's an option out there where nothing happens to the edge. Where not even rolling happens to the edge. And that's where doing steels properly comes into play. So if you take MagnaCut, which has great toughness composition-wise, and you harden it hard enough to not roll when it comes in contact with impact, then nothing will happen. And isn't that great? Wouldn't that be a great thing to have a knife that for toughness does not even roll, and it doesn't chip either? That would be pretty cool. Well, guess what? It exists. You're just not told about it. You're not educated on it because there's a very specific marketing scheme going on in the knife world where outdoor knives drill into your head that soft equals tough, that thick equals tough, when in reality there are other options out there. So like I said, I have done some pretty brutal tasks with this knife, but because it's done correctly, nothing happened to it. Whereas I've used many soft, thick bushcraft knives, and you will get edge damage on occasion from impact, and you have to get those rolls out. So what it boils down to is, a lack of content on this stuff and a lack of education on this topic, right? Because there are very specific people in the community that have like bushcraft channels, and they run very specific knives, and the whole idea is toughness, and they don't have these on hand to show like the other side of things, right? So we're really going to be focusing on that. Another thing that I just want to mention is that a lot of the channels out there and the content creators and the people that are shoving for toughness in your face, they don't generally even know how to like sharpen a knife, which is ironic because the whole saying out there is like, if you ever have to sharpen on a river rock, we have run this soft for toughness and ease of sharpening. A lot of these people don't even sharpen their knives or know how to sharpen their knives. And I'm not throwing any shade. Like, it's not the easiest thing to sharpen a knife, especially freehand. But I'll just say I talked to a content creator a couple of weeks ago over a video chat who runs bushcraft knives and stuff like that. And that said person did not actually even know the difference between BTE and DPS. So you would think somebody being a knife designer or making knives would know that terminology, but a lot of them don't even know what any of that is. Because it's just been for so many decades drilled into our head, soft and thick is tough. But during the conversation, the said person was like, what is the BTE on that knife that we were talking about? And I was like, well, I don't know. I don't have calipers to measure it. He was like, well, what did you said you sharpened it. What did you sharpen it at? And I'm like, well, 15 DPS, but I don't have calipers to check the BTE. So I don't know. I don't even own calipers. I probably should, but I don't. And he was very confused because he thought that degrees per side, what I had sharpened it at was behind the edge thickness. He thought they were the same thing, and this whole time he had thought that BTE was actually DPS. But that just goes to show there's such a lack of education on the complexity of edge geometry and blade steel and sharpening and all this stuff that we're basically, we have the wool over our eyes, and we're told that this is what you need out in the field, when in reality there's a whole group of knife makers that make knives that encompass everything you could ask for in a knife. We just didn't know it existed. So like I said, Kalari Custom Knives, Steve, he is making knives that you can beat to a pulp and they don't break. And the edge retention is unbelievable. You won't have to sharpen it or strop it every time you use it like some of these softer knives. You won't. Levi from Northern Knife Works, he is running all types of cool steels, S125 and K390 and 10V and 15V. We have John from BGM Knives. He has 3V and Magna Cut, M4, all of these really cool steels that he offers. John on his Instagram has videos of him taking like a 3V spade and, cutting through like pieces of metal and hockey pucks and like, trying to destroy the bevel basically. And because he runs a very specific geometry and heat treat that is higher, nothing happens to the edge. It's not like it rolls upon impact like we have been told Toughness will help us with. Just nothing happens at all, period. Nothing happens. So, like, would you rather have the edge roll or literally nothing happen? My mind gravitates toward nothing happening because in my mind, a knife is meant to cut, and I want my knife to cut as long as possible. Like, end of story. This is a cutting tool that I want to cut things for as long as humanly possible without my human intervention. That, to me, is the best knife. That has the best cutting performance. That is what I want. I don't want something that I have to touch up every single time I use it, And I am not throwing shade or shitting on the larger companies that, run thick, soft steel. I'm not. Everything has its place in the community. Everyone is valid. I am literally just saying, like, if you're someone like me who didn't really know that there was a middle ground that existed, I want to help educate you because I used to be uneducated as well. I used to actually only run knives like this, overbuilt and soft, because I had grown up with people telling me that, thick and soft meant tough and that I could beat on this and at least it'll only roll, not chip. That is what I grew up with. That is very much the mindset that I was under until I found this little niche part of the community that had the magic formula for everything you could ever ask for in a knife. And I didn't even know it existed. I genuinely didn't. I was always under the impression that Maximit, S110V, 10V, Vanex, they were all not worth my time because they would give me trouble when I was sharpening or trying to deburr, or they would chip. You have to baby them. You have to be more mindful. I was very much in that mindset because I just didn't even know that this existed until I started talking with those members of the community, right? I educated myself. I realized I was wrong. And then I was like, ooh, I need to look into this because that is something really special. So that's what we're going to be focusing on the next couple of months. I have a lot of blades coming in from custom makers with custom heat treats and really cool steels. I have a lot of Nitro V coming in at like 63 HRC. That's a steel that I feel is very underrated. Nitro V, AEBL, those are steels that like a lot of people don't use, but they're great like entry steels that hold an edge very well. They have great toughness. They take a shorter period of time to sharpen compared to some other steels. They're, in my mind, anybody making knives, their basic entry level steel should be something like Nitro V or AEBL. Like, in my opinion, 80 CRV2, 52 100, 1095, A2. Honestly, we could do away with all those. They're so outdated. We could do away with those, and entry levels for companies could genuinely be Nitro V. Crewwear, oh my god, I love Crewwear. Crewwear is amazing. It's absolutely phenomenal. I have a lot of experience with it. It's such a cool steel. Companies could use those as their entry-level steels, their cheapest option that actually performs well. I know there are a ton of fanboys that love the old stuff, and like, don't get me wrong, I have plenty of it. I play around with it all the time. It's cheap. It allows you to get a knife for a very low cost and beat on it, for fun. Like, I get it. I'm just saying, I wouldn't be heartbroken if companies stopped using really low tier steels and putting them at a premium price. It would not bother me if we stopped doing that, and if instead we were offering something more worth our money that just performed better. I would be very happy with that. But, like I said, everything has its place. That's just my personal opinion. No offense to any of that stuff. Like, I have plenty of it. I just am really realizing the value in options like this, If anything, I have found that these high performance blades that are literally perfect and nothing happens to them are either at an equal price to the other options or sometimes even lower. It's unbelievable. Like, I have, let me see if I can get it out of my pocket here. I have a 4V Seeker from the Scrawny Lumberjack at 64 HRC. That's pretty dang hard. In a premium high performance steel, $180. $180. This little thing is a ripper. 64 HRC 4V, handmade in the USA, $180. Like, I guess I just have a hard time finding the justification in running low hardness, soft, thick steel and charging a premium price for it. So this, that's just what we're going to be focusing on the next couple months, is education. This video is going to create a lot of conversation, I'm sure. I hope that I'm portraying my thoughts correctly. This is not to shun anybody away from anything that they love. It's not to shun people away from companies that like thick, soft steel and use it. This is literally just hoping to create a new format of education for people in case they are interested in blades that are at a high hardness with a premium steel and that still have toughness. I just want to open people's eyes to that, because toughness has been misconstrued for too long in the community, and I really want to provide a portfolio of data that shows, hey, that's not exactly true. You genuinely can have a high performance knife with very, very good toughness in a premium steel that exists, if you would like to try it out. So that's what the whole series will be about, but this is kind of the introduction to that. Great makers on the scene. Absolutely great. Like I said, Steve Kalari Custom Knives, John from BGM Knives, phenomenal work. Kyle from the Scrawny Lumberjack, phenomenal. I've got a knife coming in from Levi over at Northern Knife Works. I have a knife coming in from Todd, Goat Head Knives. That's in Nitro V at 63 HRC. That's going to be phenomenal. We've got M390 coming in from another maker. What else? 10V. We have a Splinter in 10V coming in from Kyle, the Scrawny Lumberjack. We've got a lot of stuff coming in, and I'm really excited to get it all together and do a giant test of all of those compared to all of my knives that I've collected over the years that were built for toughness. Okay? So that's what today's video is about. Drop a comment down below if you would like to chime into this conversation. Please just keep it respectful and appropriate. I never delete the comments unless they are vulgar or, just like being out of hand. So let's converse about this. Let's learn. Let's talk to each other about it. I'm really excited to see how this opens up a new threshold in the community of education. So I will see you guys on the next video. Go use your shit. Learn how to sharpen your knives, and I will see you so soon. I love you, fam. Take care.